Buying an iPad for me today.
Say what?
She's buying me an iPad.
I'm not, well, give us the details. What sparks the need for a new iPad, and what kind are you getting?
Well, it's one of the larger ones, and I'm going to get an animation product on it. I have a dream. That I could animate my RPG games that vary the original series style. So I only have to learn to draw a couple frames and use them over and learn how to move the mouth like this, like a Hanna-Barbera's cartoon. But I dream of doing that for my players, is one day putting them in really cool animation. I think that would be neat. I know. I do stuff like that. A lot of people do show openers for their RPG games. If you go to continuing missions or go on Facebook and ask for people to show off their show openers, you will be amazed at what the fans are doing. Isn't that so cool?
Very cool. Yeah, I love seeing that stuff. In fact, I'm jealous because I've seen folks do like really professional grade openers for their shows, and I'm like, yeah, if only I had the time and the money to put something like that together, and I just don't have the time to do it. And but they look great, and I love that's where technology is now, that we can do our own opening credits now, right, with music and everything, right? It's really
everything.
Really cool.
Commissioned art. I mean, for mine, I actually got commissioned art from people who do like actual video gaming stuff.
Yeah.
And so I don't tell my players, and then one day I just drop it on them. And I love grown men weeping. That just is one of my favorite emotions. I love it. All right, but we're not here about we're not here to talk about the mental trauma I put my players through. This is continuing conversations. The purpose of this podcast is to talk about all things Star Trek Adventures RPG. So this includes announcing latest releases, highlighting professionals and fans associated with the game, explaining game rules and mechanics, exploring how to be a better GM or player, and discussing the wider Star Trek verse in relation to STA, and answering your questions about the best RPG game ever, in my opinion. All right, I'm Michael Dismuke, freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures, contributor to Continuing Mission, the #1 fan site for the Star Trek Adventures game, and your average geek. And we're here with Jim Johnson, the man I've yet to make to cry. He is writer, gamer, Star Trek Adventures project manager, popcorn lover, daddy, and cat minion. How are we doing, Jim, today?
It's always good to have goals, isn't it?
It is. I'll get there one day.
We'll get there.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, doing well, thanks.
Okay, good. Well, one thing that makes many game masters cry is just trying to get their game off the ground. I can't tell you how many times on social media people are begging to find a game to play, right?
Yeah, it's the same. In fact, that's got to be the single most common thing I've seen on social media for this game for 4 years now. And actually, it's true for any game. It's people who want to run the game and can't find players, or players who want to play the game and can't find a game master willing to put the time and effort into it. It seems to be a common thing, especially as people get older and we start having more demands on our time, and like that nice life of not having to go to school or a job, or like your free time just disappears as you get older. Sad to say. And it's a challenge, right? It's really truly a challenge, especially when you get into the niche games, right? And let's not lie, Star Trek is a niche game. It's not the 800-pound gorilla in the tabletop RPG industry. And it's like the more you get away from a particular game set and you get into different game systems and game properties and intellectual properties, the available of interested number of players and game masters narrows, and it becomes a challenge.
Which is why these guides were written, because we need to recruit a new generation of game masters and a new generation of players. So I know that the group who worked on this book, one of the things we did was we wanted to make it simple, inviting, and exciting to become a game master. And this is the chapter about that. So let's break it down. The main 4 sections of this chapter are game preparation, how to recruit a crew, your first voyage, which we also call session 0. I don't know if that's what we call session 0, but maybe. And then how to run the game. So let's talk to us first. Game preparation. What are the highlights in that section, Jim?
Yeah, so this section of this chapter was really, I really tried hard to put myself into the mindset of a game master, brand new, like you, maybe you like Star Trek, or maybe you're curious about it, or maybe your friends are like, please run Star Trek for us, and like you really have no concept of what it means to be a game master, or even how do you pull together a group to play a game, right? Like, what is the very basic stuff that you need to know? And so what we try to do with this chapter is like, okay, you want to be a game master, here's the stuff you need to be thinking about, here's the stuff you want to do. Just like, I mean, this is like game mastering 101. Just really getting at the very, very basics of getting started. Like, don't even think about a long-term campaign. Think about just getting a group together and thinking about what you as a game master want to do in a game, right? Like, because it's not just your players, it's you too. You need to have fun just as much as they do. So thinking about the concept of getting it together before you really start, jumping into other stuff.
Yeah, and I have to remind people, go back and listen to some of the old podcasts about this, because we talk about world building and get you excited about what it's like to live in the Star Trek universe, the variety of things you could do. But this chapter, what I liked about it also, it talked about, where am I going to pull ideas from? Mm-hmm. There's a box on page 99, and we've talked a lot about it. Don't marry yourself to canon. If you're starting to get buried and drowning in canon and you think you need to memorize everything, you're never going to get started. So forget that. And then you have options. And there's on page 99, Jim, why don't you review to us the Gamemasters Guidance here about the different type of ways that you could get content?
Is that where we're talking about all the different resources available to new game masters? Yeah. So this is, so yeah, I mean, the advantage now, I mean, now that we're 5 years into Star Trek Adventures, as a new game master and as a new player, like, you are fortunate or you are blessed with, or cursed, depending on how you look at it, with a wealth of material available to you to use in your campaign. So you've got a whole bunch of pre-written adventures, like, modules basically available to you that you can adapt and use in your game. You've got the starter set, you've got the quick start adventures, you've got the adventures in the back of the core books, you've got a ton of PDF adventures that are available to you. There are 2 adventure compilations in print and PDF that have 8 or 9 adventures in them. There's also mission briefs. So if you're a GM who likes to kind of like set the stage and then let your players go wild and just kind of like make stuff up as you go, the mission briefs are a great way for you to kind of like get a story started, and gives you kind of like the broad outline of the story. And we've got, I mean, 50 or 60 of those spread across different products right now, with more coming. And so, plus we've got the living campaign too, right? We've got the living campaign, which was 17 adventures that were linked in 2 different time frames. You got the original series and next gen, and that's all free online. And then there's the Shackleton Expanse campaign guide, which is a huge 10-part epic multi-part campaign, plus another 36 mission briefs and plot hooks and stuff, right? So like I mean, we're recording this in November 2021, and as of right now, there's got to be probably 100 discrete episodes of Star Trek Adventures content that you could use and adapt and combine into a campaign. And so what that means is, as a new game master, there is just a ton of material, pre-written material, that you could grab and use right now without you having to put a whole lot of effort into it, and just run something for a couple hours with your game group. And,
right. I want to say, since there is so much to sort through too, this is, again, jumping on social media, Discord, Facebook, Reddit, the modifius.net forums, and knowing what kind of game you want to play and asking other game masters, and myself and Jim are, again, very accessible through those forums. If you tell us the kind of game you're going to play, we'll send you some modules and give you some ideas of where to start. And what's cool about it too, I've seen it happen, is new game masters will often post a question up there like, hey, I saw this description, where did you guys take it? And sometimes the actual writer of the module will respond. So again, we're there to make sure that you launch your first game successfully. In fact, on page 101, you put a game preparation checklist in the book, Jim. How cool is that? And so what are some of the things it tells us we should be checking off as we prepare a game?
Well, I mean, obviously you want to familiarize yourself with the rules. If nothing else, get just basic task resolution down. If you can do basic task resolution and teach that to your players, you're pretty much set. You can add all the other mechanics to taste from that point. So
in English, for people who don't know what that means roll the dice and determine whether you were failed or succeeded.
Okay. Right. And if there's any complications, that'll add more drama.
Right.
As a game master, think about how long of a game you want to play. Do you want to do like a one-off, one session evening just to get a taste for the game? Do you want to do one mission that may take several sessions to play, or are you looking at planning a longer-term game, whether it's a campaign or a season or multi-season or whatever? Like, think about how much are you willing to commit to in terms of running the game. Think about what kind of story era and play style. We talked about that in the previous episode. And then think about what kind of content you want to use. Again, are you using pre-written modules, mission briefs? Are you pulling from canon? Are you making stuff up on your own? There's a lot of different approaches you can take to it.
Good. All right. So you're all prepared. Again, you have us, you can reach out to on social media. We're going to help you get launched, but people need players. So that goes into section 4.2. What's your best advice on people getting players, Jim?
Yeah, and it's a whole new world now. Like, honestly, I can remember in the way back, way back, even before FOSSA had their RPG system, when I was looking for players to play Star Trek with me, I had a friendly local comic shop that I would frequent. And back in the day, this is, mid 80s, comic shops were also game stores, right? We didn't have dedicated game stores yet. It was a comic book shop that also happened to sell games. And we had a group of people in there who played Dungeons and Dragons a lot and other games, Star Frontiers, Marvel Superheroes, etc. And I got the bright idea that I was looking for a certain type of person to play Star Trek with me. And so I actually wrote a little advertisement. I printed it up on dot matrix printer paper, and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a crew for my Star Trek game. I want you to be over 18, some level of maturity, blah, blah, blah." Whatever, BS I threw into it at the time, thinking I was, hot stuff and wanted, something other than your average gamer. And I put that advertisement up in the comic book store figuring, what the heck, why not? This is my audience, right? And I even had my phone number. And of course, back in the day, this is landlines, right? We didn't have cell phones. So I had my little phone number print, and I cut it out so that it was like the tear off tabs, where you see something, it's like, oh, tear it off and then go call. Mm-hmm. And I got 3 phone calls from that advertisement, and one of them ended up becoming my lifelong friend. We've known each other for 30 odd years now, and he's been my co-GM for Star Trek from day one. We hit it off right away. And I met a couple other players through that too. But so that was the old school way to do it, is just like, how do you find people? And of course, now the equivalent is go onto Discord, go onto Facebook, go onto Reddit, and say, hey, I want to run the game, or hey, I want to play the game. Who's running it? Who's playing it? And just try to marshal forces that way.
I started proselytizing, and I started finding my friends who were willing to play the game and making lifelong friend decisions based off who was willing to play and not willing to play. Now the benefit of that is that I had the most eclectic group of players. If you saw them in a picture, I think I have like a pretty good diverse age range, ethnicity, all that. The bad point of it is I didn't have a lot of friends. Mm-hmm. So I was a loner most of the time. But back to what you said, the chapter does highlight some of these ideas. And I'd like to say Star Trek Adventures is a very welcoming community. And if you put yourself out there, you will find people eventually to play with. You have to be a little flexible in this day and age with technology and geography, though.
And geography and time zones and people with life commitments and school. There's just so many challenges now. It's just hard to imagine how you get a group together to even play one session, let alone a long-term campaign. But so we do provide some advice about that.
Yeah, and we'll have some future podcasts about that too, to give you some best tips. All right, cool. There's some options which you kind of discussed before about role play styles. Mm-hmm. It seems like truncated styles of play, which we talked about. I want to jump ahead and talk about the ethics that this chapter focuses on. And on page 106, it talks about meeting everyone's needs. What was your thought behind this chapter, Jim?
Yeah, so with the advent of especially online gaming, uh, we're in a whole those of us who've gamed for a long time and didn't have the internet back when we were gaming originally. There's a whole new world now, right? Where we can touch people all around the world from all kinds of different ethnic and political and religious and social and economic statures, whatever. There's just so many people out there playing games now that for all kinds of different gosh, it's every spectrum you can think of. It's and I'm trying to be very careful that I don't offend anybody, although I'm sure I'll offend somebody. But like, there's so many.
Let me take it.
There's so many neurodivergent things that people are dealing with, and there's the whole, all of us on the LGBTQ spectrum. There's just so many things to keep in mind, that people are unique and different, and we want to embrace everybody and make sure everybody has a good time at the game table. That as a game master, you need to be aware, and you need to be willing to talk frankly and honestly and kindly with people about what kind of things, how can you be accommodating to every possible need so that everyone feels comfortable at the game table with you.
Yeah, let me tell a story to make it
jump in,
make it a little more palatable and understandable what I feel you're saying. Tell me if I'm right. So back in the day in the 70s and 80s, when you had your RPG group come together, you were basically from the same town. You knew each other. There was the town culture. There was acceptable forms of behavior. There were things people talked about, didn't talk about. So when you grabbed your gaming group and went to your basement or around the table, you kind of knew these people from the town. Now the gaming world is literally the gaming world, and so what we may think and comes out of our mouth as normal conversation has different meanings, and that's just called cultural maturity. Is what we're talking about here. And so this chapter, I really liked it because it talked about sensory differences, understanding that people have different attention spans because of some of the lifestyles and life situations they may have, or even education level. I never use the term highly educated. I always use the term differently educated, because believe me, if a nuclear bomb drops and the Wall Street and college educated people are looking for food, highly educated is the farmer. So I always say it's differently educated, no such thing as higher education.
Sure.
And so it's taking that into account when everybody's coming together. And I thought this chapter set a good foundation for that. Did I my story tell it okay for you?
It's a good start. I mean, there is so much more to it, right? And I mean, we could probably write an entire book on reasonable accommodations for literally everybody, right? I mean, there's just so much, and not to dismiss it by any means, but there's just a lot to be aware of. But yeah, your story did touch on a good chunk of it.
Yeah, the world's changing in a good way. Getting to know more people. So there's 2 inset boxes that I encourage GMs to look at. Anyone who's gamed for decades knows there's always difficult players, and there's always going to be cheaters, maybe. And so there's boxes about how to deal with that, how to sort through that. So good. And I know there's some other chapters we're going to get into how to be a great player also. The player's book talks about how to maximize one's gaming experience. All right, cool. Let's move on to your first voyage, also known as Session 0. What are your highlights from this chapter, Jim?
Yeah, so those who aren't familiar with a Session 0 concept, I think it's really it's basically you're the game master. You kind of like have an idea of what you want to run. You've assembled your crew. You got your group of players together, whether they're brand new to you or they're your cadre of friends or whatever, or it's your family or whatever. I mean, however you're choosing to pull this group of people together. What you want to do, especially because this is Star Trek, and because Star Trek is such a large franchise with 55 years of history and tons of canon and beta canon and all this stuff, what you want to do is you want to ideally, you don't have to, but ideally you would run a session, what is called Session 0, where you get everybody to the table and you just talk. You like, what do you like about Star Trek? What Star Trek mean to you? Get everybody on the same wavelength and on the same baseline so that everybody is excited about the game that you want to do together. Because really, ultimately, Star Trek Adventures is a collaborative storytelling game, and you want everybody to be on board with the stories that you want to tell, right? Like, it's like if some of your players want to tell gritty wartime stories in the vein of DS9, and some of you want to do like much more utopian, positive, next gen kind of stories, you need to come to a meeting of the minds, and you need to come to some sort of agreement about how you want to approach it. And so a session 0 is just a way to get at that.
Yeah, I love that. There's a box on 108 about player expectations, and more boxes about coming to a consensus. And then there's a section which I really liked about safety and consent. And it's just about that. If you are going to have a diverse bunch of players, you do want to ask permission. Just to give an example, we had a story in my game that I was preparing for, where I was going to be talking about the Mars attack that happens in Picard. And I was going to ask the players to explore the trauma from when they heard about that. But before we went into it, I was like, wait a second, is this a subject that's okay for everybody? We have a lot of people from different backgrounds. And so we made sure safety and consent was in place, and then we moved forward and then had a really good time, exploring that. So that's basically an example of what that looks like. Good. All right. And there's some other stuff, in here about how to read the room. It's basically building up your emotional intelligence. There was a box that was earlier in the section about gaming at conventions. Talk to us about that and how that runs with reading the room or handling discomfort.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think Al Spader wrote that section because he has some experience running stuff at conventions. I do not. But the basic gist is when you run a game at a convention, you really have no idea who's going to show up at your table, right? In general, you say, hey, I'm going to run this game. People sign up for it. You get 5 to 7 new people at your table. You have no idea who they are. And you need to be able to kind of like evaluate, is anyone going to potentially be a troublemaker, or are they here to sow, chaos, or are they here to actually want to have a good time and play the game? And just as a game master, you gotta have that sixth sense of like, is everyone going to get along for the next 3 hours? And you also needed to be listening and being watching to like pick up those cues, those nonverbal cues of like, is someone uncomfortable? Is something happening and someone's feeling uncomfortable? And can you stop and redirect or resolve the issue? So it's just we try to put some thoughts in here about how to handle that. Of course, we could have gone for pages on that topic, right?
Well, and I'm glad we did it, because this book is for new game masters who most likely, a new game master is not going to be running this at a convention. But again, we wanted to put stuff in here that everyone could use, including seasoned game masters. So I thought that was a really good box that's included in there. We've already talked about finding consensus of tone and era. There's a whole bit in here about creating characters, of course, some options about how to create some backstory for your character, and also the starship. So we've talked a lot about that. And there on 118, there's a session 0 checklist, which I think is cool. So you want to run us through that real quick, Jim? That checklist, which of course this chapter goes in depth about it.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, the checklist, I mean, this is just to help a new game master just kind of like think through everything that they need to be responsible for. And guess what, game masters, you are a project manager. So whether you like it or not, there's a lot of stuff to do. It's not bad. It's fun work. It's fun, rewarding work, but it's work to some degree. You need to think about scheduling. You need to think about establishing the best methods of communication. Are you meeting face-to-face at a game table, or are you on Discord or Roll20 or any of the many other virtual tabletops out there? You need to think about time zones. You need to think about what's the best way to communicate with your group when you're not playing. Is it email? Is it Discord? Is it instant messaging? Something else? You need to introduce players to each other, have your expectations set. You need to talk about safety rules and consent, the campaign tone and era. You choose your faction, character concepts. One thing we didn't really touch on that I think we should is like take advantage of session 0, and especially with Star Trek Adventures, have everybody go through the life path together, create your characters as a group, and start building that crew, whether you're an actual Starfleet crew or a Klingon crew, or you're a group of misfits who get thrown together in the pilot episode. Take the advantage to walk through your character creation together, because you can start creating connections with other characters. And like maybe 2 characters went to the academy at the same time. You can start building in that backstory that you can use as dramatic storytelling potential in your games and give yourself a grounding right from the beginning, you know.
Yeah, I like the way you say that, because I feel that session 0 is a writer's room where everyone's getting together to get the characters in place before saying action and start writing the stories. Yeah, good point.
So you do that. Of course, one of the most important characters of any Star Trek show is the ship, right? So this is an opportunity, and like I think traditionally, maybe the game master would say, "Oh, I want to run a game on a Constitution class ship like the Enterprise." This is an opportunity to give your players some agency and say, you know, we want to run a small intimate game on a patrol ship on the neutral zone. Well, okay, so maybe that means you're on a Intrepid class ship or a Defiant class ship, or you change the scale of the storytelling that you want to do. But if you give your players some agency and some input into that, then you get stronger buy-in, and then everybody's excited and everybody's engaged in the game. So pick your ship, pick your mission profile, give the ship a name. Again, give the players an opportunity to play a role in that, because like the name of a ship is key. It's really important to your campaign. It could even be the name of your campaign, right? Like literally, I'm wearing the hat from my longest running Star Trek game, the Athena Chronicles, and we named the ship USS Athena, and we named the series right after it because it was all about the Athena. And then choose your ship talents, and you're off and running. So this section of the chapter is really all about, you got your players together, now build the crew, build your ship, and now you're ready to jump into the next step.
Yeah, a good session 0 gets everyone pumped for the first game, which is what I like about it. It's sad that you could spend 6 hours on a session 0 and you haven't even started playing yet, and people are like, "Oh, it's time to go home." It's like, "Okay, we'll come back next Saturday. We got you." You know.
Yeah, we're ready.
Yeah, and then you're ready to finally, the last section of chapter 4 is run the game, effective game mastering. I know I wrote this section, so you want to ask the question to me about it?
Yeah, so with your vast expertise as a game master, I think if I remember right, you talked about being cursed as a lifelong GM and never getting to play. Like I feel you, brother. So tell me what did you channel into writing this section about being an effective game master?
Sure. So it was all about best practices as a storyteller, and it's toward the end of this section, but one of the biggest things that I did that I've seen is most successful as a game master is make sure they all know that they're not playing your game. They are co-writing a story with you. So what would be the coolest, most dramatic thing to happen right now? If you as a new game master get that in, it's almost like, have you ever played that game where you sit around the fire and everyone gets a minute to tell a story and everyone keeps connecting the story, and you have laughs and some good times, and sometimes it turns scary and sometimes it's exciting, but you remember the story later on. That's what, to me, RPG is about, is creating a story that way. And really what you're doing is instructing the players or showing them how to get more information from this world you've created. So I always tell my players, ask why. So if something happens and you don't like it, or there's a spatial effect that you don't understand, ask why. What's behind it? That's what the whole game is about. It's about being powerful, open-ended question askers. And then from there, that's where everybody, again, creates the story. We've talked about it before, Jim. Some of the best stories we've ever had, we never even rolled dice, meaning we didn't need to worry about game mechanics, but we had those are usually the best stories we have, where the drama is set in. And that's why I say it's more like improv and karaoke. I'm doing this. And then the third point when I wrote this was just relax. Just you're not being paid yet by CBS or Viacom to do this. What you are doing is you're honing your skills. So it should be fun and you should experiment. Just do it, you know? And so that was another thing. I just want people to get loose and relaxed and have fun with your friends and just make memories. That's what the point of this chapter was.
Good stuff. And then I don't remember if you wrote this, but we wrap up the chapter by talking about, of course, now that we're in this new world of technology, and not to mention the fact that we're all still embroiled in the middle of a COVID pandemic, and we've seen an explosion of this game online, whether it's Twitch or other channels, but also virtual tabletop. So how do you run this thing on a virtual tabletop /Discord/chat room /whatever? Like, what are some thoughts around that?
Yeah, I wrote it because back in 2000, so this is 20 years ago, my gaming group moved from all being around San Francisco, California, Pacifica, California to be exact, little beach town. They went to Idaho and San Diego and Germany. They went all around the world and they still wanted to play. So we started on email, play by email, right? But as time went on and we got better apps, the group, we just basically converted to playing by text. And here's my mentality for all of you out there who are wondering, well, I don't know if I want to run a game electronically. I prefer around the table. A good marketer knows that you don't force people to use the medium you want them to use. You find out what people are looking at, and that's where you put your message out. And so I sat down as technology was moving and people were going all over the planet. I said, what technology does everyone have access to and they use a lot? And as I looked, asking that question, standing at the Starbucks, everyone was looking down at their cell phone and texting. And I said, until I get this into a text format, I'm not going to get players jumping in. And I'm not going to vouch for myself. Ask the question on a social media site how I run a Discord game. And my players will tell you it's just immersive. I don't want to say constant because we have jobs and lives, but you know, you get a text, you just reply and the game goes on. So this chapter was key to my heart. I write a lot about it on continuing missions, of course, too. But if you ever need advice about how to go virtual, reach out to the social media, and you have a lot of people who are doing it. Yeah, and that was that. So again, picking your medium is going to be important to boldly go where no gamer has gone before. And so thank you, Jim. We talked about game preparation, how to recruit a crew, your first voyage, or also known as session 0, and of course, choosing the medium that you want to use to run the game. Yep. That was a lot. Let's close it out, Jim. If they have questions for you, if they want to get their hands on this guide or other Modiphius products, what do they do?
Yeah, so if you are interested in any of these Star Trek Adventures products, your first place should probably be to go to modiphius.net or modiphius.us if you're in the North American area and you want to save on shipping a little bit. That'll have a list of all the products that are available for the game. You can also go on, if you want PDFs, you can go on onto Drive-Thru-RPG. That all the stuff is there too. Or you can go to your friendly local game store and order from there. Of course, Modiphius will get you the brick and mortar program. They'll send you the PDFs for free if you're buying the physical editions. So, you know, definitely take advantage of that because it's always nice to have the PDF as a reference tool. Plus, you can search it, all that great stuff. You can reach out to me anytime, Jim at modiphius.com. I am on all the social media channels for the game pretty regularly. So whether it's Discord, subreddit, the official forums, continuing mission, Facebook, etc. I'm not hard to find. I'm on Twitter too at scribe_Inetti. So just reach out with any questions. We'll answer the questions online if we can, or I mean on this show if we can. And look forward to talking to you. And Michael, where can we find you?
Awesome. Well, again, Continuing Missions is I co-contributor there on that blog, the #1 blog for Star Trek Adventures, and I'm on many of the same places you mentioned. I'm known as Game Master on Discord and Reddit, Michael Dismuke on every other social media that talks about Star Trek Adventures RPG. And of course, one thing we love to do, we promise we want to shout out game shops, brick and mortar that people are going to play these RPGs. Today, we're shouting out Just for Fun in Peoria, Illinois. This is the store that a player goes to in his parents' hometown. And so we love you, brick and mortar. Keep playing every kind of RPG, but make sure people are playing Star Trek Adventures RPG too. Right, Jim?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And next time we'll be talking about storytelling, which I'm really excited about. So until then, live long and prosper.
That's right. IDIC.
Peace out.